covered with darkness and at ease in bed. Summer gathered in the weather. The wind had the proper touch. The breathing of the world was long and warm and slow. You had only to rise, lean from your window, and know that this indeed was the first real time of freedom and living. This was the first morning of summer. And standing by Tom, he knew the answer, staring down at his motionless feet.
I'm alive!
Going home from the show with his mother and father and his brother Tom, Douglas saw the tennis shoes in the bright store window.
Bang! I delivered your packages, pick up packages, bring you coffee, burn your trash, run to the post office, telegraph office, library. You'll see 12 of me, in and out, every minute. Feel those shoes, Mr. Sanderson? Feel how fast they take me? All the springs inside? Feel all the running inside? Feel how they kind of grab hold and can't let you alone and don't like you just standing there?
On Sunday morning, Leo Offman moved slowly through his garage, expecting some wood, a curl of wire, a hammer, a wrench to leap up crying, "Start here!" But nothing leapt, nothing cried for a beginning.
Should a happiness machine be something you can carry in your pocket? Or should it be something that carries you in its pocket? One thing I absolutely know, it should be bright.
Silently, Leo Offman let his wife into the toilet. She stood before the 8-foot-tall, orange-colored box. There was a click. The machine shivered quietly like a huge dog dreaming in its sleep. And then, inside the happiness machine, Lena Offman began to weep.
Leo, the mistake you made is you forgot some hour. Someday, we will got to climb out of that thing and go back to dirty dishes and the bed not made. While you're in that thing, sure, a sunset lasts forever almost. The air smells good. The temperature is fine. All the things you want to last. But outside, the children wait till lunch. The clothes need buttons. And then, let's be frank, Leo, how long can you look at a sunset? Who wants a sunset to last? Who wants perfect temperature? Who wants her smelling good always? So after a while, who would notice? Better for a minute or two, a sunset. After that, let's have something else. People are like that, Leo. How could you forget?
Fire, Papa, the machine's on fire! Douglas and his friends raced to Colonel Freely's house to experience another machine which told tales of long ago.
Seems like the town is full of machines. Mr. Hoffman and his happiness machine, Mrs. Fern and Miss Roberta and their green machine, and now Colonel Freelake's time machine.
It was such a fine day, and then suddenly a cloud crossed the sky, covered the sun, and did not move again. John Huff, Douglas' best friend, was moving away.
Very quietly, Douglas moved across the lawn to where John Huff stood like an iron deer in the twilight. Far away, the other boys stood hands up, faces grimaced, eyes bright as stuffed squirrels. Here was John, alone and motionless, and no one rushing or making a great outcry to spoil the moment. Douglas walked around the statue the other way. The statue didn't move. It did not speak. It looked at the horizon, its mouth half smiling.
John, now, don't you move so much as an eyelash. I absolutely command you to stay here and not move at all for the next 3 hours.
Then there was a rushing sound, and he knew without looking that there was nobody behind him now. Far away a train whistle sounded, and then he realized it was only the sound of his heart in his body.
Doug and Tom headed over to the arcade where Madame Terrat stood imprisoned in a glass box, telling fortunes for eternity.
I said, told all about death and destiny and stuff in rich folks' parlor. But she made one mistake. She predicted Napoleon's defeat and death to his face.
That evening, laying in his bed, Douglas had a grand epiphany.
And runabouts and friends and near friends can go away for a while, or go away forever, or rust, or fall apart, or die. And if people can be murdered, and if someone like great grandma who was going to live forever can die, if all of this is true, then I, Douglas Spotling, someday must die.
He shut his eyes.
June dawns, July noons, August evenings over, finished, done, and gone forever, with only the sense of it all left here in his head. So thinking, he slept, and sleeping put an end to the summer of 1928.
Author's note. This book, like most of my books and stories, was a surprise. I began to learn the nature of such surprises, thank God, when I was fairly young as a writer. Before that, like every beginner, I thought you could beat, pummel, and trash an idea into existence. Under such treatment, of course, any decent idea folds up its paws, turns on its back, fixes its eyes on eternity, and dies. It was with great relief, then, that in my early 20s I floundered into a word association process in which I simply got out of bed each morning, walked to my desk, and put down any word or series of words that happened along in my head. I would then take arms against the word, or for it, and bring down an assortment of characters to weight the word and show me its meaning in my own life. An hour or 2 hours later, to my amazement, a new story would be finished and done. The surprise was thorough and lovely. I soon found that I would have to work this way for the rest of my life. First, I rummaged my mind for words that could describe my personal nightmares, fears of night, and time from my childhood, and shaped stories from these. Then I took a long look at the green apple trees and the old house I was born in and the house next door where lived my grandparents, and all the lawns of the summer I grew up in, and I began to try words for all that. What you have here in this book, then, is a gathering of dandelions from all those years. The wine metaphor, which appears again and again in these pages, is wonderfully apt. I was gathering images of all my life, storing them away and forgetting them. Somehow I had to send myself back, with the words as catalyst, to open the memories out and see what they have to offer. So from the age of 24 to 36, hardly a day passed when I didn't stroll myself across the recollection of my grandparents' northern Illinois grass, hoping to come across some old, half-burned firecracker, a rusted toy, or a fragment of letter written to myself in some young year, hoping to contact the older person I became, to remind him of his past, his life, his people, his joys, and his drenching sorrows. It became a game that I took to with immense gusto, to see how much I could remember about dandelions themselves, or picking wild grapes with my father and brother, rediscovering the mosquito breeding ground rain barrel by the side bay window, or searching at the smell of the gold-fussed bees that hung around our back porch grape arbor. Bees do have a smell, you know, and if they don't, they should. For their feet are dusted with spices from a million flowers. And then I wanted to call back what the ravine was like, especially on those nights when walking home late across town, after seeing Lon Chaney's delicious ride, The Phantom of the Opera. My brother Skip would run ahead and hide under the Ravine Creek bridge like the lonely one, and leap out and grab me, shrieking. So I ran, fell, and ran again, gibbering all the way home. That was great stuff. Along the way I came upon and collided, through word association, with old and true friendships. I borrowed my friend John Huff from my childhood in Arizona and shipped him east to Greentown so that I could say goodbye to him properly. Along the way I sat me down to breakfasts, lunches, and dinners with the long dead and much loved. For I was a boy who did indeed love his parents and grandparents and his brother, even when that brother ditched him. Along the way, I found myself in the basement working the wine press for my father, or on the front porch Independence night helping my uncle buy and load and fire his homemade brass cannon. Thus I found to surprise, no one told me to surprise myself, I might add. I came on the old and best ways of writing through ignorance and experiment, and was startled when truth leaped out of bushes like quail before gunshot. I blunted into creativity as blindly as any child learning to walk and see. I learned to see my senses and my past tell me all that was somehow true. So I turned myself into a boy running in to bring a dipper of clean rainwater out of that barrel by the side of the house. And of course, the more water you dip out, the more it flows in. The flow has never ceased. Once I learned to keep going back and back again to those times. I had plenty of memories and sense impressions to play with, not work with, no, play with. Dandelion wine is nothing if it's not the boy hid in the man playing in the fields of the Lord on the green grass of other Augusts, in the midst of starting to grow up, grow old, and sense darkness waiting under the trees to see the blood. I was amused and somewhat astonished at a critic a few years back who wrote an article analyzing dandelion wine plus the more realistic works of Sinclair Lewis, wondering how I could have been born and raised in Waukegan, which I renamed Greentown for my novel, and not noticed how ugly the harbor was, and how depressing the coal docks and rail yards down below the town. But of course, I had noticed them, and, genetic enchanter that I was fascinated by their beauty. Trains and boxcars and the smell of coal and fire are not ugly to children. Ugliness is a concept that we happen on later and become self-conscious about. Counting boxcars is a prime activity of boys. Their elders fret and fume and jeer at the train that holds them up, but boys happily count and cry their names of the cars as they pass from far places. And again, that supposedly ugly rail yard was where carnivals and circuses arrived with elephants who washed the brick pavements with mighty steaming acid waters at 5 in the dark morning. As for the coal from the docks, I went down in my basement every autumn to wait the arrival of the truck and its metal chute, which clinched down and released a ton of beauteous meteors that fell out of far space into my cellar, and threatened to bury me beneath dark treasures. In other words, if your boy is a poet, horse manure can only mean flowers to him, which is, of course, what a horse manure has always been about. Perhaps a new poem of mine will explain more than this introduction about the germination of all the summers of my life into one book. Here's the start of the poem.
Byzantium I come not from, but from another time and place, whose race was simple, tried and true. As boy, I've dropped me forth in Illinois. A name with neither love nor grace was Waukegan. There I came from, and not good friends Byzantium.
The poem continues, describing my lifelong relationship to my birthplace.
And yet in looking back I see, from topmost part of farthest tree, a land as bright, beloved, and blue as any yeats found to be true.
Waukegan visit me often since. It's neither homelier nor more beautiful than any other small Midwestern town. Much of it's green. The trees do touch in the middle of the streets. The street in front of my old home is still paved with red bricks. In what way, then, was the town special? Why, I was born there. It was my life. I had to write of it as I saw fit.
So we grew up with mythic dead to spoon upon Midwestern bread, and spread old God's bright marmalade to slake in peanut butter shade, pretending there beneath our sky that it was Aphrodite's thigh, while by the porch rail calm and bold, his words pure wisdom, stare pure gold, my grandfather, a myth indeed, did all of Plato supersede, while grandma in rocking chair sewed up the raveled sleeve of care, crocheted cool snowflakes rare and bright, to winter us on summer night. And uncles gathered with their smokes, emitted wisdoms masked as jokes, and aunts as wise as Delphic maids dispensed prophetic lemonades. To boys knelt there as acolytes to Grecian porch on summer nights, then went to bed there to repent the evils of the innocent. The gnat sin sizzling in their ears, said through the nights and through the years, not Illinois nor Waukegan, but blither sky and blither sun. Though mediocre all our fates, and mayor not as bright as yeats, yet still we knew ourselves the sum, Byzantium, Byzantium.
Waukegan, Greentown, Byzantium. Greentown did exist then? Yes. And again? Yes. Was there a real boy named John Huff? There was, and that was truly his name. But he didn't go away from me. I went away from him. But a happy ending? He's still alive, 42 years later, and remembers to love. Was there a lonely one? There was, and that was his name. And he moved around at night in my hometown where I was 6 years old, and he frightened everyone and was never captured. Most importantly, did the big house itself, with Grandpa and Grandma and the boarders and uncles and aunts in it exist? I've already answered that. Is the ravine real and deep and dark at night? It was. It is. I took my daughters there a few years back, fearful that the ravine might have gone shallow with time. I am relieved and happy to report that the ravine is deeper, darker, and more mysterious now than ever. I would not even now go home through there after seeing the Phantom of the Opera. So there you have it. Wiggigan was Greentown, was Byzantium, with all the happiness that means, with all the sadness that these names imply. The people there were gods and midgets, and knew themselves murder as the midgets walked tall so as not to embarrass the gods, and the gods crouched so as to make the small ones feel at home. And after all, isn't that what life is all about? The ability to go around back and come up inside other people's heads, to look out at the damn fool miracle and say, "Oh, so that's how you see it." Well, now I must remember that. Here is my celebration, then, of death as well as life, dark as well as light, old as well as young, smart and dumb combined, sheer joy as well as complete terror ridden by a boy who once hung upside down in trees, dressed in a bat costume with candy fangs in his mouth, who finally fell out of the trees when he was 12, and went and found a toy dial typewriter and wrote his first novel. A final memory. Fire balloons. You rarely see them these days, though in some countries I hear they're still made and filled with warm breath from a small straw fire hung beneath. But in 1925 Illinois, we still had them, and one of the last memories I have of my grandfather is the last hour of a 4th of July night 48 years ago, when Grandpa and I walked out on the lawn and lit a small fire, and filled the pear-shaped red, white, and blue striped paper balloon with hot air, and held the flickering bright angel presents in our hands a final moment in front of a porch lined with uncles and aunts and cousins and mothers and fathers, and then, very softly, let the thing that was life and light and mystery go out on our fingers, up on the summer air, and away over the beginning to sleep houses, among the stars, as fragile, as wondrous, as vulnerable, as lovely as life itself. I see my grandfather there looking up at that strange drifting light, thinking his own still thoughts. I see me, my eyes filled with tears, because it was all over. The night was done. I knew there would never be another night like this. No one said anything. We all just looked up at the sky, and we breathed out and in, and we all thought the same things, but nobody said. Someone finally had to say, though, didn't they? And that one is me. The wine still waits in the cellars below. My beloved family still sits in the porch in the dark. The fire balloon still drips and burns in the night sky of an as yet unburied summer. Why and how? Because I'd say it so.
Douglas is driven by Summer. Summer is his inspiration and new adventures. He does have some conflicts with the other characters, like when John Huff leaves and they get into an argument where Douglas tells John he hates him. For his character, we think that Asa Butterfield, who played Bruno in The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, would be perfect because he is young and about the same age as Douglas.
Adam Sandler from Anger Management would be perfect for playing Leo Hoffman because he can play even a crazy guy and be serious.
Kate Beckinsale from Anger Management would be good to play Lena Hoffman because she has previously worked with Adam Sandler as well as Jack Nicholson.
Jimmy Bennett from Daddy Daycare will be perfect to play Saul because he looks like a little kid but can act like an adult.
Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino would be perfect for playing Mr. Sanderson because he is such a dynamic actor.
Joel Courtney from Super 8 will be perfect for playing John Huff because he looks like he will be awesome friends with Asa Butterfield.
Grayson Chance, who did a cover of Paparazzi, would be our choice to play Tom because he is younger than Asa Butterfield and he can sing, so that means he would have good diction.
Jack Nicholson from Anger Management would be perfect to play Cardinal Fleetwood because he's old and funny and can play any character.
The end.
Moving with no speed at all. So the calendar frozen there with
Sorry. The Honeysuckle Ladies' Lodge was full of ladies looking in each other's mirrors and tugging at their skirts and asking
flowers. Freely. Because he's old and funny and can play any character.
Colonel. It's Colonel. Like
Cardinal.
Like corn kernel.
Corn kernel.
Corn kernel freely.
Corn kernel freely.
Popcorn kernel.
Popcorn kernel. Kernel.
Kernel.
Kernel.
Kernel.